I have heard African American people say they don't want to be referred to as African. I have heard people there say, I'm not an African, so why are you calling me an African? And then there's a separation that happens, and it's because it's deeply rooted in history. So there's the people who will say, you know, I didn't live in Africa, like she was saying, I'm not from Africa, and I want to separate myself from what I see of Africa because I don't live, because there's a stereotype about living on trees, there's a stereotype about poverty. You know, I know people who, Black American people, African American, whichever terminology a person uses, would refer to an African immigrant living in America as things like African booty scratcher.
Come, oh, come me, man, you are.
My name is Wadamaya. What's your name and what do you do? Let me start from here, dog. What's your name and what do you do?
My name is Ivy Prosper. I'm a media professional, so I produce documentary film, I present, which is TV hosting, I write, I do public speaking. I actually wrote a book that was recently published called Your Essential Guide on Moving to Ghana.
You're going to give us the link so that people can buy your book.
Sure, no problem.
Thank you. And what about you?
So my name is Ama Boaje. I am the founding curator of the Afropole.
Wow.
So we are trying to connect diasporans and Africans around the world to do business and make money.
Yes. It's all about the money.
It's all about the money.
What are you?
I'm Naomi Tete. I work with the Afropole and I also have my clothing brand called the Queen's Closet.
Wow. And lastly?
My name is Brigitte Perini. I am an associate producer with Refine Creative. I'm a producer of documentaries.
Wow. It looks as if Wadamaya is so lucky today. I'm the only guy sitting here with 0 degrees knowledge, man. I don't have anything in my head. I don't know who an African American is. I thought, oh, since we are black, we are all Africans. So this year is actually an exciting year for Ghana, the year of return. I want to know, you have been to America before, right?
Yeah,
You've lived with African Americans.
I actually lived in America before.
What about you?
Oh, yeah, for a short time, yes.
What about you?
Yeah.
You've lived with African Americans before.
Yeah.
Wow. So which means that you need to educate us, we Africans, especially those of us who have never traveled before, those of us who have never mingled with African Americans before. What are you going to tell us about African Americans? Somebody out there don't know who an African American is, right? Can you tell us what you think of African Americans, first of all?
I will say that the term African American is a very heavy term.
Wow.
It can mean, for example, for some people, the child of an African immigrant.
Okay.
It can mean the descendant of a slave. It can mean someone who emigrated from the Caribbean. In America, African American covers a lot of things, but it's also a very sort of difficult, emotionally word, right? There are some, black people who live in America who maybe don't feel connected to the continent. They don't feel connected to Africa, and so it can be kind of difficult, right? Like, why are you calling us African Americans, but white people are called white, right? On the census, they're called white Americans. Why are we being called African Americans when we actually didn't descend directly? As in, like, my mother is an African, my great grandmother doesn't know where she's from in Africa. So it can be a hurtful term. On the other side, for some people, it's a really positive term. Yeah. For some people, it's an opportunity to say, you know what? Yeah, maybe I don't know where I'm from in Africa, but I'm proud to be from a place like Africa.
So it's like a connection.
Having that connection. So it's a very loaded, I would say it's a very loaded term. So you can't just be using it anyhow.
Anyhow. So which means Wadamaya is using it anyhow.
Oh, I'm not saying that.
No, you just said it.
I'm just saying, you have to be thoughtful. Anyone who's watching this video, you can't just be like African American, Black American, Black. You have to be.
I'm actually representing a lot of Africans at this very moment.
Okay.
Because I've talked to few Africans, even in China and here in Ghana. They don't know who an African American is. That's why I want you to answer this question for us, so that somebody out there can learn something from you, just like me, learning from you. That's how it is. So,
I mean, I will also say, aside from African American, there are the people who talk about Black Americans.
Okay.
And I think we talked about this earlier, how, you mentioned there's like an evolution of the terminology.
Yeah, because there was, they were called Negroes, Blacks, than African American. Because African American has now become, as you said, it's like a deeply rooted word, gives them the connection of being African, and now that's the politically correct, accepted term. But people still say black people, right? And then Africans tend to say black Americans because it sort of distinguishes them as that they're still black people. We're still from the same roots, the same skin complexion, melanin, but you're also American. So I always found that people use that in a way that it's kind of like, well, we know you're black, but you're also an American. So it kind of separates you from who we are as Africans, is what I have observed. I'm not saying that's what it necessarily is, but that's the observation that I've always made based on experience of what I see here in Ghana, especially. I get asked that question all the time, even though I was born in Ghana, but I grew up in Canada. I did live a short time in the US. Is always, are you a black American or are you an Afro-American? I get that question in Ghana as well. You know, I get Afro-American, but I don't often hear Ghanaians say African American. Ghanaians always say black American. Yeah.
And that's also very loaded in a way.
Yeah.
Because on the one hand, there is like that separation.
Yeah.
You know, like you're not African, right? Like I don't want to get
black.
Right. So and it can be hurtful actually. So
You just said you are not African. There are few black Americans out there who hate to be called African. Do you know about that?
you are educating me. I mean, I will say that there are African Americans who have a very difficult, like I was saying earlier, relationship with the term African American because they've never been to Africa. They don't know any Africans, like personally, as in relatives or anything like this. Their perceptions of Africa are what they see on TV, things like that, and they don't want to be. I mean, even Africans here are trying to leave the continent because they don't want to be associated with some of that, right? So it's a very difficult thing to say that someone doesn't want to be called an African, sure, but it's understandable, right? Like it's not that I just have this deep-seated hate and I'm angry.
Yeah, and I've heard
it's coming from somewhere and going to somewhere with them.
And I have heard African American people say they don't want to be referred to as African. I have heard people there say, I'm not an African, so why are you calling me an African? And then there's a separation that happens, and it's because it's deeply rooted in history. So there's the people who will say, you know, I didn't live in Africa, like she was saying, I'm not from Africa, and I want to separate myself from what I see of Africa because I don't live, because there's a stereotype about living on trees, there's a stereotype about poverty. You know, I know people who, Black American people, African American, whichever terminology a person uses, would refer to an African immigrant living in America as things like African booty scratcher, you know, making fun of them because of who they are and where they came from. On the one hand, you have a group of people who have made the choice to immigrate to the United States. Then you have the people who are there that it was through lineage by force that they're in the United States. And you have this dynamic of programs that are available for African American people who've been there through ancestry. And then you also have programs available for new immigrants. So sometimes these new immigrants are able to access things. So there was a period of time that I used to spend a lot of time in Buffalo, New York. I was in a relationship with somebody at the time, but anyway, that's a whole other story I'm not getting into. So there was a period of time I spent a lot of time there. And I used to come across people who would get upset and say, that African moved here and already has his own shop and already doing this, and I've been here my whole life, and what am I getting? And then there's this like divide and this anger that why is that person getting what I deserve to be getting when I've been here all this time? So then you end up getting this friction that happens. So then you get Africans who say they don't want to be like African American people because they want to be, because they come to go to school, they want to get a master's degree, they want to get a PhD, whatever it is that their parents have come for them to do, they are trying to focus and do those things and trying to separate themselves. So you get this dynamic of some people, I'm not saying all, some people who want to be separate, they want to maintain their culture because they know their culture as African people. Their parents may be Nigerian, they may be Ghanaian, they may be from Senegal, wherever it is, they know their roots, so they're able to connect to something, whereas African American people don't have that direct connection. And there could be a lot of pain in seeing that, oh my goodness, that person has a connection to something and I don't. My connection is here in this country where they mistreat me because of the color of my skin. So there's so many layers in this conversation that it's hard to really give one blanket answer.
Let me cut it short, man. Whatever you're saying right now, I think it comes down to people that I talk to sometimes, okay? Like most of them, I mean like few of them will say that Africans hate them. Is it because of what is happening in the United States? Because you've never been to Africa, you've never talked to any African over here. Why do you think that Africans in here hate you? Is it because of what is happening in the United States? Like you just stated right now, like, oh, Africans are going to school, they are doing that, they are owning shops and they are not or something. Is it what is bringing the wet hate between Africans and African Americans?
I can't speak to hate because I've had people who say that they dislike certain things or they have a sense of anger and animosity, but I personally haven't come across people who say they hate Africans or hate African Americans. There's been tension, but that's not with everybody, but there's been tension, not necessarily hatred, because still, whether you're from Africa, whether you're from Jamaica, from Trinidad, from the United States, and you have melanin in your skin, you are still treated the same way by the oppressor. You're still treated the same. You walk into a room, nobody's going to look at you and say, oh, are you African? Or are you African American? Or are you Jamaican? They just see a black person. And if something's going to happen based on your race, it doesn't matter where you came from. You're all the same people. So in the end, even though there's this tension, you're still united as a people, as black people. And I think that's why people have this desire to feel connection. I think that social media has changed the dynamic of what people think of the continent of Africa. Because of social media, people are able to look and see, oh wow, that's Africa? I didn't know that's what it was. Now I want to see what it's really about. Whereas in the past, it was just, you had to believe what the newspaper told you, what the news told you.
CNN.
You know, she mentioned National Geographic. National Geographic actually recently apologized for creating stories that gave Africa a certain negative narrative. So people only had that in the past, but now because we have the power, Ghanaians here who share pictures on social media, people over there see, oh wow, that's what it looks like. Oh, it's not as bad as I thought. Then there's this desire of maybe I should go, which was why this whole year of return that the government is having is exciting, because it brings people here to see for themselves.
So what are you going to tell us? Like somebody out there want to return. I know a lot of people want to return, and if you want to return, try and see me. I'm going to give you the...
Are you immigration?
No. That was just by the way. I'm an immigration officer now. So what are you going to tell African American out there? Not just African Americans, but the black
people in the diaspora.
Who are desiring to come here. Do you have any message for them? This is the last thing that I want you to say. Any message for them? Anyone, would you say something to encourage them to return, or something that they need to do in the process of returning or something? You know what my question
I mean, I can give an answer. You know, the other ladies can also answer too. My advice is just come. As a person of African descent, when you're a black person, the government has said that they've opened up the doors for the diaspora to come. There is something in the immigration policy called right of abode, which is intended to give people of African descent, black people, the right to return to Ghana and stay for an extended period of time, and to make the visa process less complicated for people of African descent. So feel free to come, visit the Ghana embassy in your country, figure out how it is that you get your visa to come, have a visit, and just come and explore. Visit the website yearofreturn.com and you'll see all the events that are happening throughout the year if you want to plan your trip based on what's happening for what you want to see.
To add to that, I feel like the reason why we've had these distorted information and connection in the past about Black Americans, African Americans, and Africans is because we are lacking that knowledge. We have not really taken the time to learn about each other, to learn about perhaps living in the US, like, or living in Africa, the slave trade. Africans learning about Black Americans, African Americans taking the initiative to learn about the continents. So for me, it's really the time where we want to change that narrative. We should start or continue to build on that knowledge. It's very important to get to learn about each other in order to connect well and to connect where it benefits each other, and to really have that bond that we should have. We need to learn about each other, and for me, that's the where we are lacking. And if we, lack of knowledge, my people perish. So once you don't know that, you will forever, the others will forever continue to tell our stories. I recently bought a book that is a history of different countries, and Ghana is one of them. Unfortunately, I haven't read it yet, but there's power in knowing who you are, where you come from, and also about places where there are other people like yourself. Wow. So then it propels you to want to go and discover for yourself. For so long, other people have been showing Africa and showing who we are and showing, what we stand for. But in order for us to tell the true story, it needs to come from our own people. That's it.
I mean, I will say on the point of education, what makes it a little bit difficult for both parties, Africans and African Americans, is the system that they sit in does not allow for that education to happen. So in Ghana, for example, I know, like, through my work with the ministry, that you don't learn African American history, right? Like, it's not part of the coursework, and you're not taught that, okay, this is Ghana's history and this is Ghana's history as well, right? Like that we sold slaves and that they're here and this is what happened to them, etc. And this is what is going on right now with them, and this is it cuts off somewhere, right? Or it focuses more on our political history, things like that. And then on the other side, when you're in the U.S., it's been a struggle to even get your American history to now talk about someone, and then there's how many of those people, over 50 countries, and how many ethnic groups? So it's one of those things, right, where you're like, where do I even start? But I love what you said about social media. You start with popular culture, and I believe popular culture is such a powerful force. People see like wearing African print or listening to Afrobeat as cosmetic, but when I tell you that is how America controls the world, isn't it Hollywood and rap and rock and roll? And yes, so if we're also trying to connect with each other, these are still powerful mediums to do that. And I think that there's an opportunity right now where children of immigrants of the biggest brain drain era, the 1980s and 1990s, are coming of age with social media. That is powerful. And they're coming of age in a time where they've gone to college with African Americans, they're going to university in China with African Americans. So that link is happening. And it's a make or break moment, right? Like, are we going to spend that energy being angry, which we're allowed to have? Yes. Or are we going to spend that moment being like, you know what, I was angry, but actually, what are we doing going forward? Yes. Because time is definitely moving. Yes. So
let's move with it.
Exactly. So I think there's an opportunity.
Yeah. And I have to say, what you're doing is really great with your channel, showing people things. It's sort of like a connector between Africans and the Chinese, also even understanding about Africans, especially with the way that China is just all over this continent. That's a whole other conversation.
That's another video.
That's a whole other conversation. But I'm just saying, I commend you for what you're doing.
Thank you so much.
Bringing these stories out and having this conversation.
But
appreciate your time.
But I need to say, like, I'm really grateful for everything. And trust me, I just told Bridget that thank you so much for introducing these amazing, beautiful ladies to me. Like I told her, like, I think 1 hour ago, because when I started talking to you girls, I was like, wow, I have a long way to go. But anyway, nice to meet you. Your name again?
Ivy Prosper.
Ivy, I think I'm going to share her YouTube channel. You also have a YouTube channel. I'm going to share her YouTube channel so that you can see a lot from her. And then your name again?
Amma of Afropole.
Black Global.
Yes.
Wow. And then, what? Nah, me. In Ghana, number one is a very hot name.
Oh, I can't wait to hear what he's gonna say.
Oh, man. your brand again? I'm so sorry.
Queen's Closet.
What?
The Queen's Closet.
Oh wow,
Queen's
the Queen's Closet. I need to have the King's Closet.
You're
And what about
invited.
you?
Brigitte, not Bridget.
Brigitte. It's my first time hearing that name.
Yeah.
And your branding?
You have to meet francophones more.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
I want to learn French first. So
And then what?
this year I'm gonna learn French.
My brand. I
Yeah.
am my brand.
No, I forgot your brand. What's your brand?
I work for Refine Creative as associate producer, but I am my brand.
Oh.
Brigitte Sissoko.
Oh, okay. So I'm gonna see you again. We're gonna do a video together. Come on.
Why not?
Okay, so thank you so much for watching this amazing episode, and I'm gonna see you in the next one. I am Maya.